Welcome to today's episode of Sacred U's Pathways to Wellbeing. I am thrilled to have you join us for a conversation that promises to be both enlightening and deeply transformative. With me on today's show is someone who I hold very dear as a cherished guest, Elizabeth Kipp. We will be diving into a topic that is not only close to Elizabeth's heart, but also has the potential to profoundly impact our lives: ancestral clearing. We will explore how clearing ancestral issues can liberate us from the burdens of the past and help us lead more fulfilled, lighter lives. Before we experience this fascinating discussion, do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Give us a like and visit www.sacredu, that's the letter U, .love for more valuable resources. May you enjoy today's conversation. Welcome to today's podcast, Sacred U's Pathways to Wellbeing. And I've got a beautiful, I really will call Elizabeth a dear friend, even though we're on the other side of the world. Elizabeth, it is great to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm just thrilled to be here, Sophia. It's always good to good to see you and good to be with you. And I'm thrilled about this new podcast. It's just great.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going today to have a wonderful conversation about something that I'm really interested in. It is dear to my heart. I don't know a tremendous amount about it, which is why I'm excited to talk to you. And that's all about clearing our ancestral issues, like ancestral clearing, and how we can liberate our lives through ancestral clearing. Can we start, Elizabeth? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what really is ancestral clearing?
Sure. Thanks so much, Sophia. I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist, trauma trained and yoga informed addiction recovery coach, and ancestral clearing practitioner. Ancestral clearing is a process that's been trademarked and registered by John Newton of Health Beyond Belief. It was pioneered by a man named Howard Wills and then further developed and is taught by John Newton. It's a process that addresses the imprints that the past creates, the momentum, which we can get into all that in a minute. So it has a scientific and spiritual foundation, but basically it's an energetic. It would be called it might be called energy medicine. It might fall under that category, although we don't diagnose anything. We address the spiritual aspect of whatever the thing is that someone brings in the moment, and we see what happens. Here's the thing. We're actually calling on the creator or consciousness or God or whatever you want to call that energy. We're calling on it. As the practitioner and as the client listening, they're asking for help. And as the practitioner, I'm asking Creator to help us release that which no longer serves us. We're not asking it to take it away. We're asking it to help us release, right? So we're honoring the free will. We're honoring our agency by that. And we use the word forgive to mean offering up that which no longer serves us. So it's a little bit different use of the word forgive in that we're using the very specific definition, offering up that which no longer serves us. There's about 30 different ways that John teaches us to get at the burden. And the magic really, I feel, is that the process leverages the power of the present moment. And in the present moment, the quantum physicists tell us that we can access past, present, and future all at once. And I have a background in science, I've seen this process in work. I've been at the receiving end of it, as well as I've been a practitioner for over 10 years now. And I was so impressed with it when I first experienced it. I was like, what's happening here? Clearly there's something happening. And I really wanted to understand the science behind it and why it was so powerful. And what made sense to me was the fact that we're working in the present moment and we're working with asking for help, and we're working with this powerful energy. I mean, we're asking the boss of bosses to help. And when we ask for help, we get it. That's my experience. We may not get it the way we want it, but we get it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat, which maybe needs to be a bit of clearing around that. Thank you for explaining that. And what I understand, and please tell me if I'm right or on the same path, what you're saying is like ancestral clearing. In my mind, we're carrying issues, we're carrying trauma that our ancestors experienced and it's been carried down through the generations.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that affect us in our present life? How does trauma from our ancestors affect us now? And yes, and we're going to go in, you offered to do a clearing, so at some stage, please do, because I'd love to know how does trauma carried from our ancestors affect us in our present life?
Yeah, that's got a lot of answers, but and just in terms of how it presents, you could imagine one of the things we get, I clear just because I do this process so frequently. We get issues around scarcity, and we get issues around worry, fear-based things. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. The scarcity thing, maybe let's just look at that one. So just in a very grounded, obvious imprint, you can imagine. So here's the thing, sciencey. The egg that when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, when your grandmother was about 4 months pregnant with your mother's eggs formed. All the eggs she's ever going to have, they started developing then. So now the egg that was you and the egg that was me are now sharing space with our mother and our grandmother for 5 months. So we're sharing the energy of both of those individuals. And imagine that maybe the mother had because it was common, maybe the mother had a stillborn or a miscarriage the last pregnancy. And so there's concern during the pregnancy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold on to this baby. Or maybe that's just an aspect of it. Another one would be, I've already got a family of 5 and I don't know how I'm going to feed one more mouth. I don't know how are we going to do this. So that's another aspect. Another one might be, I don't think I have this, the mother, the grandmother saying while she's carrying the mother, I don't know if I have the strength to carry another baby. So these are 3 pretty common, women know these things. This is stuff that happens. So here's the thing, the developing egg, that energy is living in that energy and developing in that energy. And this is an energetic imprint that passes from one generation to another. So you see how we're asked, the way we're looking at that is an energetic thing. Now, remember, grandmother sharing space with granddaughter, right? But that grandmother shared space with her grandmother and on down the line in the other direction. So now you've got a whole lineage. And if you've got a lot of, I don't know if we're going to have enough food for everybody, energy coming in the lineage, and it doesn't get resolved. Now you've got an imprint. It's just a way of looking at it. Now look at it in another way. I studied evolutionary biology, so I always look at trends. And I'm thinking to myself, how does this work, and what would the evolutionary advantage be of something like this? And you can think of environmental information, like we're talking about, as being information passed from one generation to the next. And it may be life's best bet for that developing egg. This is the environment we think you're going to be coming into. So let's get you ready for that. So the odds are, I could go off on that. That's a whole nother, but because it gets very big very fast. But you can see that there's a pulse of life that's moving through the system. It's a self-correcting system. It's an evolutionary system, and it's gonna hedge its bets the best it can so that the next generation has the best shot at making it, so that it can reproduce for the next generation. That's like a kind of an evolutionary view on it.
That makes sense. Yes, it does. And it totally makes sense that the experiences of our ancestors, whether it's recent ancestors, as you say, our grandmother and our mother, but even before that, past generations, whatever they've gone through, it continues down the line. And until now, we've become aware and we can clear it. Can I ask you, Elizabeth, just getting a little bit personal, if you don't mind, what about you? Was there a pivotal moment in your life that led you into ancestral clearing? And how has that helped you now?
Oh, okay. There's a couple of touch points I'd like to hit there. One, I actually have a memory of being 4 years old in my living room with my family and asking myself, what am I doing in this family? I felt the weight. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't verbalize it. I had the question in my mind. And we didn't talk about things like that in my family. I held on to that. I observed it. I noticed it. I felt it. I felt the weight of it. And I didn't know what to do about it, or even how to discuss it with anybody till I got into this work. And I happened to be in a group event, a live group event with John Newton. And I wasn't, normally you have to raise your hand in that setting for him to do the work, but he knew me, and I don't know, he saw something. It was a crazy night. There were a lot of people that had a lot of big burden that walked into that room that night. And he looked at me and he said, "What is it, EK?" And I was like, I knew he knew. He was like the one person on the planet. And I knew exactly what he was talking about when he said, I know he wasn't very specific. It doesn't matter. That's how this work is. This is when you're in the present moment. It's magical. So he did the clearing work, and I was able to release that. And it was astonishing. It was astonishing to be like 4 years old and feel the burden of that, and then be, I don't know, in my early 60s and carry it that long and feel it release. And what I figure it was, whatever it is, was my parents had just experienced World War II, and my mom had lost her mother in World War II in a war situation. And my father had also lived through the Depression and been affected by it. My mom, not so much, but my dad had been very affected by the Depression. His father in First World War. So lots of war stuff. And then my own family on my mother's side, there was a lot of war, big war stuff in that side of the family. I was picking up on that energy, and it was very powerful. And let me tell you something, it was just indescribable to be able to release that burden. Now, the first time I had, how I got into this work to begin with, I had a history of 40 years of chronic pain. The doctors told me I wouldn't get better. I felt like they were using as I said, science background, research science background. So I was like, yeah, I'm not sure they're working with a model that's robust. I felt like they were working with a limited model relative to the body's ability to heal. But it took me 40 years to find a doctor who actually understood the nature of chronic pain and was able to help heal me. He helped me heal. It's like how that worked. He wouldn't take responsibility for that. It's not the way he works. But John Newton was a wellness practitioner in that pain management program. And I experienced this not knowing what I was going to experience. I experienced it head on, like it's a blind test. I had no idea what was coming. And not only did I have an experience, the whole room had an experience, and it was very powerful. So I was really astonished because I had my science hat on. And just because of where I was, I'm analytical. That's the way my training was, this analytical mind. So I'm looking and trying to sort out the room and what's happening in the room. And I remember realizing that everybody had an experience, including me. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, what? I know something happened here. What was it? Is it measurable? Can he repeat it? And does he teach it? I just went boom. I went right into research mode. We haven't done the research studies on it, but there are tens of thousands of people around the planet have experienced it and reported in and from the field. Again, we don't make claims. We just do the work, and the client decides its effectiveness.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because you've just brought in a bridge to my next question, which is wonderful, because I was going to ask you or bring in that there's still people in the world that are very skeptical, especially about all things energy healing. Okay. So how do you respond to people who say that energy modalities like ancestral clearing aren't scientifically proven?
Okay, I love the question, and I also love a challenge, and I love people to be cynical. I think a critical thinking is really important. And don't you think that I did a whole bunch of it and continue in this vein? And again, I point to the quantum physicists. They tell us everything is energy, and energy is a vibration. It's pretty simple. So we're working with energy, and we're working with vibration, and sound is a vibration, and we work science. Thoughts are also vibrations. So this is sometimes we work silently in this. A lot of the time in this practice, we work silently. I won't work silently on this particular way that I'm going to go at it, but we do work silently. Some of the ways that we get at the burden are done silently. It's still energy, because there's still something happening. So what is your perspective when you're asking that question? Are you coming from Newtonian physics, or are you coming from quantum physics? And they're very different, right? So this understanding of everything, energy is a vibration, and every vibration has a frequency, and we're dealing with that. This is like cymatics, CYMATIC, cymatics, study of sound waves. Like, we're at that level, right? So you have to look at the quantum physicists and what they're up to understand. I can't get into the nitty gritty. I'm not that kind of, I don't have that kind of depth, but I have enough understanding that I can say, oh, now I understand why this is working. Because in my poor logical mind, I'm cool with the mystery. I don't have to know everything, but when I'm working a modality, I want to tether in the grounded world. I need some kind of, how can I tether this to some kind of reality that makes sense to me? And so I like to have this foot in the scientific and the foot in the spiritual, and I can bridge between the two.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And it is an interesting world, isn't it? With all the energy modalities, and yet people are still very skeptical of stuff that is natural, stuff that's been with us since day one. And Elizabeth, I do have more questions for you. I want to get more into about your book and about yoga and how you incorporate all that into ancestral clearing. But maybe now is a good time to experience one.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, I'd love that. Everyone so this is what's cool about this work, is that it's as powerful live as it is on the replay. Again, because we're working in the present moment, which has access to past, present, and future. So that's how that works. So everyone listening to this, whenever it is, just notice what sensations are in your body and notice the level of intensity of those sensations from like 0 to 10. I can feel my sitting bones on the chair, my feet on the floor, and I've got some pressure on my knee against part of the table. I can feel my back against the chair. I have a little bit of pressure, a tiny bit of pressure here from my head wrap. And the level is maybe altogether, it's maybe a 3 out of 10. So just to give you an example of what I'm asking. So just notice the sensations that you have, the level of intensity, and just let these words pass over you, remembering that we're asking Creator to come in and help us release that which no longer serves us. And we use the word forgive to mean offer up that which no longer serves us. Here we go. Higher power, Creator, Holy Father, Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Infinite One, Oneness. You're known by many names, yet you are one. We ask humbly and gratefully for us and all our ancestors and all their relations through all space, time, dimension, realms, lifetimes, and incarnations, for all sickness and the ensuing grief and suffering, for the times we stood powerless and unable to help ease the pain of our loved ones, for survivor's guilt in plagues and pandemics that swept through our lives and our communities. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For misunderstandings, disputes, arguments, fights that broke out and resultant injuries, whether unintentional or intentional, and for all the guilt anyone carried because of it. For every raid, assault, incursion, battle, war, and Holocaust, and for all the angst, the betrayals, the fierce anger, and any guilt we felt because of these actions, and the guilt others felt because of our actions. For all unresolved resentment, enduring aversions, loathing, or outright hate that erupted and continued unrelentingly, intergenerationally. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves once and for all of it, no matter what it was. Please and thank you. For secrets, hidden pacts, and for all the times we were sworn to silence under duress, for any abuse, slavery, torture, or any other injustice, and all that arose in the lineage because of these events, including physical, mental, emotional, spiritual illness. Please help us all forgive each other and forgive ourselves. For the highest good, please and thank you. Please help us release one another and release ourselves, find peace with one another, and find peace with ourselves for once and for all, now and forever. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Just take a nice breath in and let it out and just notice how that feels. Is it big or small or different? Did it move around? Just notice.
Thank you for that.
Welcome.
I'm just tuning in for me, the feelings, and there's definitely something that has shifted. Absolutely. You feel so much lighter. So very lighter.
Yeah, that's the word. That's the word. Pretty much like 98% of the time people say I feel lighter.
Yes. And clearer. And I'm assuming that you can use ancestral clearing for all aspects of your life, for any issues that you might be experiencing, whether that is physical pain, emotional trauma, or even issues with finances, because that also gets carried down through the ancestors, doesn't it?
Yep. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. We don't actually, I'm a little bit careful because I'm not a trauma therapist. I'm a great coach to support people. I'm trauma trained, but I'm not like therapist. So I'm a great coach in that space to bringing in practices like yoga, for instance, and ancestral clearing to support the work that therapists do with patients. So we don't diagnose and we don't say we treat anything, but we do address the spiritual aspects of the effects of intergenerational trauma or historical trauma in the lineage that are showing up. And it shows up by the way we work the process. There's a lot of different ways we could do it. We could do it head on like we just did, in a straight up prayer form. And then, but there's other ways that we come see what's happening there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you mentioned yoga. Tell us more about that, because you do yoga inform addiction recovery, or use that as a method. Tell us how that actually works. What's the difference between that type of yoga and your normal yoga, and how do you use it to help to work alongside ancestral clearing?
Oh, lots of questions in that one. Yoga, the Yoga Sutras, there's 196 Yoga Sutras that Patanjali, somebody named Patanjali, codified back about 2,800 years ago. And they begin by saying yoga is now. First sutra. And all the other sutras follow from that. So the first instruction is yoga is now. It's pointing directly to the present moment. This is where ancestral clearing and yoga meet. We're both working there, right? And by the way, that's where the quantum physicists are pointing us as well. Isn't that interesting? Also, in terms of addiction recovery, we can't heal in the past and we can't heal in the future, but we can heal here. So it's very helpful to have a practice that's present moment oriented to help people recover from addiction. One of the things like that I have, because I'm in recovery from all that chronic pain and all the opiates and benzos that I took, the prescriptions that I took for all those years, until I finally was able to get off the medicines and found a doctor who actually understood chronic pain. I had this tendency, and a lot of us do, I didn't want the present moment because I didn't like how I was. I didn't want to be in my body particularly because it hurt all the time. Right? So I was referencing, oh, I remember when in the past, or I was referencing, oh, I wish in the future, or if I had some kind of like new pain or bigger pain or whatever it was, I would go, oh, I remember I had that then, and oh, I have to do this to get here in the future. So you see what I'm doing? I'm everywhere but in the moment. And you can't heal when you're everywhere but here. Yoga is that. And then there's a lot more to it through the yoga, obviously, but the practices that we do in yoga point us to the present moment. We're aligning the body in a way so that we have optimal angles, and we're also wanting to, because we're working in the present moment, now we're aligning with God, with Creator, with the divine. So there's an alignment in a few ways there, and all of those things are conducive to healing. So you see how they meet recovering from anything. I just happen to be pointed at the addiction recovery community, and ancestral clearing and yoga all in the now. It's all happening here, right? That's about as succinct as I can put that.
I love that. Thank you. You can't heal unless you're in the now, the here. Really, that is so, so powerful, and it's so true. And I'm sure and can I just, first of all, Elizabeth, take a moment to really honor you for sharing your journey, which I want to go into even more about chronic pain, because I hear you, I've been there. And that's why I love talking to you so much, because I've also experienced so much chronic pain and overcoming a lot of uses of narcotics and chemical substances and things like that. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure we're not the only people in the world. And anyone who's listening to this, please reach out to Elizabeth if you want to just chat about what you're going through and how she can help you too. Elizabeth, would you like to share a little bit more about your journey with chronic pain? How long has it taken you to overcome the pain aspect? And I want to bring into your book too, the way through chronic pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's just define chronic pain. So we've got to paint the landscape for everyone. Chronic pain is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. Any pain, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, as you said earlier, it doesn't matter. All of it sends the same exact signal to the brain. It hurts. So the brain can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart, or a bill that can't be paid that's a past due, right? It all sends the same signal and hurts to the brain. So that's what it is. And why is it a thing? And why is it different from acute pain? So we have this thing called a stress response that gets activated when we're under threat, perceived or otherwise, which includes pain. That's information that something's happening, right? And we address it, and then the stress response goes back into the off position. So stress response comes on when there's a threat or perceived threat. We meet the threat physiologically, biologically, all of it, psychologically, and then the stress response goes into the off position. That's a stress response that's in a balanced state. In chronic pain, the stress response gets stuck in the on position. Now we're talking about chronic stress, and the body is not made for that. We spin out all kinds of stress hormones like cortisol, for instance, which is it's great for a shot of it, but it's present in amounts at the wrong time of the day and in the wrong amounts. Too much, it's toxic to the system. Unfortunately, nowadays, our society is Australia's Western kind of culture too. So I'm in the United States, and our culture is go, and success means maximum production. And I was raised in that, right? So my underlying frequency, my nervous system, was maximum effort at all times. What is that? That's chronic stress. That's a stress response stuck in the on position. That is a recipe for chronic pain. So I had that kind of going on, and I had an accident when I was 14 in my low back that busted a bone and created a lot of chaos in the low back. And then I had to have a bunch of surgery, and it took and anyway, it never healed. The pain never went away. And what was interesting was the doctors said you can't heal from chronic pain. And I had a science background, and of course, I was devastated by that prognosis, by the way, at first. But after I had a chance to mull it over, I realized they're operating in a scientific paradigm. It's a paradigm shift, and they're operating in a scientific framework. You know what their mistake was? They said, you will not heal. They said that. They made a pronouncement, and I knew they'd made an error, because in science, everything's probabilities. It's not facts. And they said you will. They didn't say you might. They said you will. You will not heal. And so I knew things were not okay. I knew there was an issue there, but I had the benefit. Not everybody has the benefit of having a research science background, where I understood looking at assumptions and what's the model and all the stuff, right? Not everybody's got that equipment to walk into a doctor's office and hear something like that and be able to go, aha, I think you made an error there. Or could you possibly have another explanation, or whatever? I was stuck in this, and they gave me opiates. They said opiates and benzodiazepines for the anxiety, opiates for the pain was the best answer that they had. And so fortunately, I had a meditation practice. I started meditation in about the mid-1970s, and I really feel like that was a thing that I had a lot of support. I had family support and an amazing husband, and I had ancestral stuff that was helping me, like grit and perseverance and gratitude and all kinds of yummy things that came in. I had burden, but I had also wonderful things, gifts that I had from the ancestors as well. So a lot of things helped me get through those 40 years of chronic pain. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. Thank you. Thank you. Do you have your book with you? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I do. Yeah, it's right here. The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power. And I wanted to share one little bit with you, because I know you were late to it. And I think everyone will benefit from this. I call it the cycle of suffering, and it's what we do in chronic pain. Anybody that's had a chronic pain experience will recognize this. And anyone that has a friend that has chronic pain now will be able to watch for this. So this is just this is what humans do, okay? So it's a cycle. It's a negative spiral that we can get into with chronic pain. It's a cycle of disconnection, isolation, judgment, attachment, control, and resentment. And we can't share our pain experience. And so we become isolated. We can be quite traumatized by the pain experience, depending on what the story is in the mind about the pain that we're having. And so now we're disconnected from our authentic self. We're spun up in the ego and we've forgotten our authentic self because we're so busy guarding. We're so defensive. Oh my God, I've got this thing, right? So now you've got disconnection and isolation. And you're not just disconnected from others and yourself. Maybe you feel disconnected from Creator as well. Next, we judge our experience as bad. Oh my God, I have this pain, it's horrible, right? I was certainly trained that way. And then we get in relationship with it, right? As soon as we start judging it, now we're in relationship with it and we've gotten attached to it and we try and control it. And because we can't control it, we get a resentment. And now we're off to the races. We're back to disconnection, isolation, judgment, attachment, right? More control, more resentment, right? Negative spiral. That's powerful dynamic going on there. The good news is we can get out of that. That's the good news. But understanding that this is what the mind does based on the way that we're really programmed to deal with pain. We're all at war with pain. We don't see it as just straight up, this is information. What are we going to do with it? We don't see it like that. We see it as this is the enemy. That's the way I was raised. Yeah. So I wanted to share that. The good news is that you can shift that programming. And yoga is one of the things that'll do it. Meditation, yoga, breath work, polyvagal, vagus nerve stuff. This is all the stuff that I use. Ancestral Clearing will bring it in too, because it will help too, because it's going to help you clear the belief system that got you all upset about pain in the first place, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And again, you just answered my next question, but it's amazing, isn't it? How easy it is to get into those spirals, especially when we're not fully aware or we haven't fully healed on something. And that's what I was going to ask you, Elizabeth, is how can someone maintain, the positive changes or the experiences that we have after an ancestral clearing? How can that be maintained? Because I'm assuming you can't just it's not just a matter of having one ancestral clearing, because we've got so much stuff that we carry. How can we maintain a positive life?
Yeah. So some of the things in ancestral clearing, because we're working in the present moment and all things are possible in the present moment, you can drop things, they're gone. That can happen. And a layer can come off. And then you notice the next layer the next day or the next week or whatever. And then you work on that one. So it can be like that too. So I just want to make sure that everybody's viewpoint, that it's not self-limiting. So we're working the field of potentiality in the present moment. All things are possible. So remember, and of course the mind can't even track that, because how can we possibly imagine all possible things? But I'm just saying, notice if you're limiting, because we're working in the now, which is very powerful. So one is stay in the now. That's just such a powerful position. And the other thing that Dr. Prescott taught me, he wrote this beautiful book. He's the doctor that took me through his pain management program. He passed away in 2016, but he left us this beautiful book, Conquer Chronic Pain, an innovative mind-body approach. And he taught me, don't judge the moment. And I was like, dude, I'm just sitting here minding my own business, not judging anything. And That was my attitude when I heard him first say that the first day I was in his classroom. 3 sentences later, I realized he was talking about my pain. And golly, I had judged my pain as bad my whole life. So now I had a habit that I had to break. Pain is bad. That was the mantra. And the nervous system, pain's bad. So it's in the nervous system, right? It's not just in the mind, it's in the nervous system. So the work is to rewire. This is why yoga. This is why ancestral clearing. This is why polyvagal work. This is why we do the work that we do, that I teach, because it works for me. I'm actually working the program that I teach. And we built the habit one day at a time. So we rewire the new habit one day at a time. That's how we do it.
Absolutely. And it's so true. Just to do what things one day at a time. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you brought up, so what you practice is what you help people with. Now, of course, for anyone who's watching this or listening to it, all your links will be below. So do reach out and connect with Elizabeth. But you help people all over the world.
And I have lots of people that come in just for ancestral clearing. They don't have a chronic pain problem per se, or they're not in addiction recovery. Although those people come in for ancestral clearing too, and coaching and all that. But I have just everybody comes in for ancestral clearing. Like all kinds of people come in for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us on today's conversation, today's chat on the pathways to wellbeing. Before we finish up, can I just ask you, is there anything else that I could have asked you? Any other questions? And how would have you answered?
Yes, I would. If I had to give a TED Talk, what would I want everybody remembering as they walk out? Same thing here. What would I want everybody to remember as they walk out, as they leave this podcast? And that is this. The greatest healer in your body lives within you. Doctors can set a wound and stitch up a wound. They can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. Only the body knows how to do that. So be aware of where your gaze is set, right? Just be aware of where you're looking. Are you looking out there for the answers? Are you looking in here? I'm not saying healers don't give us the answers. They help us. They give us the conditions. They suggest the conditions that we need, the tools that we need in order to heal, but the healing happens in here.
So very true, isn't it? The healing happens within our bodies, and I've always believed that our body is the greatest healer. And yes, I totally agree with you. You know, doctors can set bones and stitch up wounds, and they can diagnose things. Or go to the doctors and have a blood test if you're not feeling it. But to me, your blood will always tell you how everything is going. But the body knows what it needs, and when we allow our body to operate at its optimum level, it can heal no matter what. So thank you so very much for joining us. I said it has been an honor, and I'd love to have you back. Love to go into this more, because there's all different parts of ancestral healing. There's all different parts of healing, as you said, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, and how ancestral healing can help with that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia. It's my honor to be here, and it's just a joy to be with you again.